We have been covering a technology fast, digital minimalism during the month of January. If you haven't yet, it's still not too late. I would love for you to join me and start your very own 30-day technology fast. I've got a link below that takes you to a workbook that I created that walks you through the process of setting it up for yourself. And then you pair that with, my suggestion is you pair it with creating your vision for the year, which really is the first step to getting out of surviving motherhood, because it gives you something to work for. It's something to be excited about, something to help you not just be bored or busy but not fulfilled or frustrated because you can't get to the things you want to do, right? It's just the first step of gaining clarity so you know what to take steps on. First step. So when you pair this technology fast with creating your vision, it helps you get space and time. It helps you think again. And it also, for like religious person, like it gives you more time to just ponder and think and connect with God about what he sees for you and your family and your life and your children and your marriage and what that looks like. So today I want to walk you through some books that I've read just in this last month in January that have really helped me think a little bit more deeply about not only technology fasting specifically, but also what do we want our life to look like instead as we try and ease out of this technology fast and create, sustained rules or ways of living for ourselves.
Hi, I'm Jessica Jackson, and this is the new way to thrive in motherhood by leaning into who you are, what you love, your unique family situation and personal mission to create a life that you actually want to live. I want to invite you to join me in saying no to the life of the exhausted supermom, burnout, victim thinking, being pulled in so many directions, suffering through survival mode, or being lost in motherhood, and say yes to building strong families and moving forward on our greatest goals in order to create a fulfilling life that we are excited to wake up to each day and become a soaring mother. This is the Thriving in Motherhood podcast.
Okay, some of these books are specifically having to do with technology and some of them do not. So in the past, if you are thinking about technology or technology fast, like Cal Newport with digital minimalism comes up, or I think I've mentioned a book on here, 24/6. It talks about it's written by a Jewish author, and she talks about having a technology Shabbat. So you fast from your technology every single week for 24 hours, okay? Every single week, and they put it away. There's just a lot of resources, or we've talked about how to break up with your phone. There's so many books that are specifically about how you use your phone. This time around though, I read some other books that I thought were fantastic. So this one is called The Opt-Out Family by How to Give Your Kids What Technology Can't by Aaron Lochner. So it's written almost like in a series of essays, but also has some practical stuff in there as well about how to apply these principles in your home and in your family and in your life. I find there's a lot of inspiration to it. Now, if you read reviews about this book online, there's a lot of it's impossible. It doesn't make sense. I think with all books, you read it with inspiration in mind, right? You start with where you're at and then you take what works for you right now and use inspiration. So I have found this great. I love thinking about it. And just this idea of, in fact, let me just even start with this. I love how they introduced it with their kids. They started really young. And the dad took their kids out, or their oldest daughter out, and just had her sit and observe people, I want to say at a restaurant and at a park, and had them notice the children, observe, oh, hey, all these people are sitting next to each other outside, and they're on their phones, and they're not even feeding the ducks, and they're not even talking to each other, and they're not looking up, and they're missing all these things, right? And just have the kids observe, what having a cell phone does to you outside and with the people around you. They observed how parents were on their phone and kids were out of hand at the restaurant, or how a dad and the kids were on the phone and the mom just looked sad and was kind of hanging out there by herself because everyone was ignoring her. So just, I don't know, kind of this gentle, lovely thought process, as well as some actionable, practical ideas for what your family culture can be like without a heavy reliance on technology and cell phones and things like that. So highly recommend, really fun. The next book here that I've read part of. So this book is called Dopamine, Finding Balance in the Age of Indulgence, or Dopamine Nation, Finding Balance in the Age of Indulgence by Anna Lembke. I don't know how to say her name. I actually listened to a podcast interview with her on the Diary of a CEO podcast, and it was absolutely fascinating. And I will link to that episode below because I want to say it's like a 1 or 2 hour listen, and you get a lot of the highlights. Now, I got the book thinking I want a little bit more science and I want a little bit more practical. So I started reading at the beginning, and she shares a lot about addictions, because one of the things about dopamine is that pleasure and pain are totally connected. And we live in a world where we are bombarded with so much access to high amounts of dopamine, which rewards itself in our brains as pleasure, that we are no longer able to handle pain in the same way that we used to in normal, healthy ways. And so how do we live in a world where everything is just making our dopamine sensors just way off the charts, which also makes it highly, 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 highly addictive. And anyway, so I love the concept, got the book, because it is about addiction. There's some really just intense stories in there. And so the way that I've approached this book is I'm not reading it cover to cover. I'm going like very straight in certain chapters, trying to get the science, trying to get the practical, not meandering my way through it. I will say that depending on what your tolerance is with reading about people's specific addictions, that might help, but that's there's a lot of detail. Okay. Then my next book is called For the Family's Sake, The Value of Home in Everyone's Life by Susan Schaefer Macaulay. Now, I have read her book For the Children's Sake, and if you are in the homeschooling world, you have probably heard of that book. This one's really fun. It's about home and family. And anyway, it was written, let's see, when was it written? 1999. Okay, it was written in 1999, so it's been around for a while. And it just is written beautifully. It just gives you a lot to consider, a lot to think about when it comes to creating home and culture and family. And so this is written way before cell phones, and even like the internet was not taking the world by storm yet. So it's not so much about not using that, but it's a beautiful perspective in, well, what do I want my life to look like? What do we want our home to look like? What do we want our family to look like? And my fourth book that I read this month, also along that same line, is Habits of a Sacred Home by Jennifer Pepito. Again, this one is a new release. It came out, I think, in the last year or two. And I love Jennifer Pepito. I've interviewed her a few times on the podcast, and I think in the summit as well, the Soaring Mother Summit. But this one is really fascinating. And I really love this book because it took us through different virtues and principles using different people in history, and Christians specifically, of how they lived out these characters and these values, and then invited you to create your own standard of character and living, or a rule of life for each of these values. And so on one hand, it's just, again, another really beautiful way of thinking, how am I living? Am I living these life with these values and the characters separate from my technology usage, right? Like it's not what are we not doing, it's what are we doing? And so it was really great. On another like practical level, there are these names that I've heard thrown out over and over and over again, like Wendell Berry. And this is the first book that I read that I was like, oh, I know who Wendell Berry is. Oh, I really want to read his stuff. Oh, I understand. So I also felt like it was just like a really great introduction to a lot of historical people that I never quite understood who they were enough to get really excited about them. So this was definitely like you read one book and now you want to read like 20 more books from this book, and you want to learn about all these new people and these different parts of history and different pieces of the world. So it was really a great read in that way. And yeah, it was a lot of people referenced in the, I would say like classical education world, specifically like Christian classical education world. I've heard these names come up often. I wasn't quite sure of who they were, what their significance was. So it was a great introduction in that sense. So those are my 4 recommendations. Again, keeping this short in honor of any technology fasts that you are currently doing or are thinking about doing, or you're recovering from and you want to catch up and give your, some stuff to think about. But as far as like your so what, your takeaway here, I would love for you to leave in the comments if you're on YouTube, or if you're, listening on iTunes, or, wherever you're listening, go ahead and leave a review and let me know here, what is your, something that you're replacing your technology use with? Like, what is a bigger vision that you have gotten for yourself and for your family and for your family culture, that that you want to replace that time with. Because again, the goal of this 30-day technology fast isn't just to take a break and jump back in exactly how you were. It is to step away long enough that you can reset, cut down some of those addictions. And that was actually, in this dopamine book, they recommend 30 days away from whatever your addiction substance of choice is. Social media and phones totally count. So once you've taken your 30-day break though, being very intentional with, we created these rules before of what your 30-day technology fast looks like. And now you want to exit with rules too of, okay, what will I do and what will I not do with technology? And it is amazing. Some stuff just will have totally disappeared and you don't even have to think about it again. Like for me, I used to spend a ton of time on Pinterest, and a couple of years ago when I did a technology fast, I never went back. Occasionally I'll get on there to look at something specific, but it was eradicated from my life just by taking a 30-day break, and I didn't have to put any effort into it. Other things you find that you're slipping back into again. And other things you start up, you just learn how lovely it is to go to bed without a phone by your bed, and you look forward to that time that you have to unwind without any technology. And it's just you changed what you desired, changed what you look forward to. So yeah, let me know below what is your new vision, or what are those rules or those things that are coming out for you that you're replacing moving forward on with how you're using your technology. And I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week.
Where you are planted, watch the blossoms grow.